Hello, welcome to Tov Jewish News Channel. With us today, attorney Ziv Maor. Hello, Ziv. Thank you for joining us. So today, let's start with the very basic. What is international law?
Well, in order to understand it, it's quite not intuitive because it is very different from the way that ordinary civilians conceive the concept of the law. We as civilians, we have a very strong notion of one element of what law is, which is it is binding. Even if we choose to obey the law, we know that it is not actually a choice. There are people that choose to break the law, and potentially there are mechanisms within the government that are designed to punish them and to enforce the law and make sure the law will eventually be abided by most citizens. This very crucial element of what law is in our eyes as civilians simply do not exist in international law. In a manner that brings the question, is it even a law? Does it even answer the definition of a law? The international law exists only to the extent that each and every country decides to legislate within its own internal legislation mechanism what is proposed by the global community to become an international law. Then, and only then, it will become a law. And any country that have done this, that legislated and ordinated a certain treaty, has the right anytime that she wants to leave this treaty and not to become a part of it anymore. So, to summarize this point, international law is only binding to the extent that a certain government, a certain country, has legislated it in a binding manner in its own legislation. This is the first thing that we understand. This is a term that jurists love to call customary law. It is a law that is adopted by custom rather by a binding mechanism. And this applies to every aspect of international law, including the issue of the Hague International Court of Justice, which is what is currently very heatedly debated within the Israeli public.
So what treaties did Israel actually sign up for, and why? What's the upside and what's the downside to signing into these treaties?
So there are two treaties at hand. One that licenses the International Court of Justice. Israel ordinated it in 1957, and Israel, I must say, was one of the most prominent countries in promoting this treaty. Yet, Israel, like most of the countries that signed this treaty, has decided to deduct or to eliminate the authority of the Hague International Court of Justice on issues that regard armed conflict between Israel and its neighbors. This element is explicitly written within the law that in which Israel has legislated the ICJ treaty. So according to this provision, the court does not have any authority on the war that we are currently having with Hamas. The second element that needs to be understood is another treaty. It is the treaty against the crime of genocide. And this is, again, a treaty that Israel was a very prominent figure in promoting it. In fact, Israel and Germany were the two countries that promoted it back in the 1960s, 1970s. But this treaty also does not authorize the ICJ to judge in issues between countries. It authorizes it, the ICJ is rather than the ICC, which is another tribunal that sits in Hague. It allows it to judge individuals which took part in the crime of genocide. It does not allow it to judge between countries. This is what the treaty itself says. So as a result of all of this, we must say that regardless of how you look at it, the ICJ has had no jurisdiction and no authority to make any binding decision towards Israel. That is to say that the decision that this tribunal published just Friday, a few days back, is not binding in any way against Israel.
Okay, and I have even it sounds very basic, but what can they judge on? Let's say that they do have some binding power over Israel judicial system, but is it political or is it legal? What is actually being discussed here?
Political and legal is the same thing. If the political system decides something, it becomes an act of law. It becomes binding. So this is the same thing. There is another layer that needs to be considered, which is let's call it the extra legal thing. So it is I don't know. It is completely legal. I don't know to eat with with your mouth open. There are no laws against it, but it is extremely impolite. And if you do this in a restaurant, if you do this in an elegant venue, in a manner that draws negative attention to you, you will eventually end up paying the price for not doing what the society around you expects you to do. This is the outcome of acting against the laws of society. Other governments, other countries expect us to have some respect to this tribunal, even if we do not legally recognize its authority. Now we come to the most heated issue, and what should we answer to these expectations of us? What the Israeli government said is, okay, we will respect it, even though it is not legally binding. And this brings us to a very dangerous territory because, as I said earlier, the jurists call international law customary law. It only exists due to the customs of every government to tolerate it and to exercise it and to respect it. And once a government says, listen, I don't have to because I did not sign the treaty, but I choose to do so, this is a statement, a proclamation that is very hard to come back from. It will be very hard if eventually, for instance, the ICJ will issue a decision that goes directly against Israel. It will be very hard for Israel in terms of its relation with other countries to say, no, in 2023, 2024, I decided to go with the ICJ. Now in 2026, when they make the actual decision against the law, I no longer recognize its authorities over me. This is something that it will be very hard to say. The right answer, which was not given by Israeli government, is we do not cooperate with this anti-democratic, anti-Semitic body, that anti-Semitism is systemically intrinsical to the way that the justices of it are being elected. The United Nations General Assembly is not a democratic body. Each country has the same vote, but the moral gravitas of the single vote of the representative of the greatest democracy, United States, is not the same as the gravitas of the representative of Iran or of North Korea or of Zimbabwe for that instance. This is not what democracy looks like. This is not how democracy works. So we do not respect the assembly of this tribunal that basically was chosen by a very anti-democratic, inherently anti-Semitic body, which is the General Assembly of the UN. They can make whatever decision they want. They can discuss any claim and any complaint that comes to their table against whoever they want. We do not play this game. We are a democracy. We respect the social treaty between a public and its polity, and laws are only binding if they actually represent a democratic mechanism. This is not the case with the way these laws are being practiced by anti-Semitic bodies like ICJ. This should have been the answer that Israel should have given to the world, to the global community, and it failed to do so, and this is very disappointing.
Yes, and also it seems dangerous because South Africa can do this over and over and over, and there's basically no risk on their side, while Israel is taking a huge risk because if there are accusations confirmed in the court of law, even if it's not obligating legally, it's going to do very bad press for Israel. So why did Israel take on South Africa in the ICJ? Why did we accept the complaint?
Well, first of all, let me address the issue of risk that you've mentioned in the beginning of your question. It's not true to say that there are no risks for South Africa. There is a risk for every action that every country does in the global arena. The risk on their side is the risk of being boycotted not only by Israel but also with Israel allies. This is how diplomacy works nowadays. So Israel, for instance, is in very close relations not only with Cyprus and the UAE but also with Eastern European countries, and together this coalition stands for quite a strong economical bloc that can put pressure on every country, no matter how remote, every country that wishes to make business with any of those countries. We have this power. We are a prominent member of this group, of the Eastern European, Eastern Mediterranean group, but the Israeli government never spoken about the possibility or the idea to utilize its power in order to achieve goals, for the instance, claiming prize from the rude action that was taken by South Africa. If South Africa would have known that Israel, with its allies, had the capability to take a financial prize from its crumbling economy, if South Africa continues with its anti-Semitic course, maybe it would have acted differently. And in terms of risks that Israel is exposed to, the biggest risks that we need to be aware of is as follows. So in various countries, unlike in Israel, the law enforcement systems are very distributed. They're not centralized as they are in Israel. Now, once a decision is being given by this court that is recognized by many, many Western, specifically European countries, it becomes an issue of the motivation of the manager of some police station in some area in rural France to decide that if a low-ranked officer that served in Gaza and shows in Facebook that he was in Gaza and he takes a vacation there with the family, it becomes an issue of the initiation of the police commander of a certain station in some unknown place in France or in Italy or in Germany to take him in custody. It puts risk not on the state of Israel, but on soldiers all abroad. This is why Israel must make a statement against the moral legitimacy, not only legal illegitimacy of the ICJ, but also of its moral. If such a commander of a police station in rural France would understand that his public sees him as a proxy of an anti-Semitic body that is hunting Jews, if this would have been the case, then the danger would have been much smaller. As for the question, why did Israel go there in the first place? Why did our government choose to cooperate with this anti-Semitic body? I certainly and literally have no idea. I discussed the issue with some of the ministers, members of this government I'm friended with, and I couldn't find a single explanation that makes my mind. I think that this is a solo exercise of Prime Minister Netanyahu, maybe trying to avoid the stigma of a leader that did anything that was supposed or could possibly be defined as a genocide once he finishes his political career in Israel and wishes to become somewhat of an international figure. So it is a personal agenda rather than a national one. I cannot think of any good reason for Israel to join this charade, and that's the way it is.
What would happen if Israel did not join?
If Israel would have not joined, probably the tribunal would have sat and make decisions, which by their letter would have been probably harsher than what we've seen on Friday. For instance, they would have issued this writ that South Africa asked for the war to be stopped, but Israel would have ignored it. And this would have ignited a very mild and moderate debate on the international arena, whether this writ is legally binding or not, while Israel stands that it is not, and this is what would have become of it, nothing more than that. If maybe a few years later they would have issued another decision that says that the entire war constitutes a genocide. But the fact is that decisions of the ICJ does not generate reality. They either describe reality or describe lies. And this is not genocide. So if the ICJ would have decided that this is a genocide, they would have been a liar, and Israel would have accused them of being a liar, and this would have been a divider between governments and countries that stand with Israel and with the truth, or countries that have some anti-Semitic elements within them and choose to side with the lies of the ICJ and with Hamas and with South Africa. This would have been the outcome. And it would have been a very much simpler outcome on Israel's behalf, because you have to deal only with lies. You don't have to deal with statements that some have said that you have taken upon yourself their legal validity. And this is a way easier battle to fight and to win in than trying to explain why, even though we recognize the ICJ, we still do not respect their decision. So again, I cannot think on any justification for this act to have been made.
So why is Israel still signed up for this committee? I know that other democratic countries have resigned from the committee or did not sign it to begin with. So why we are still on it?
No, we're talking about, I'd say, 70-80% of the democratic countries signed the Committee Against Genocide. This is, and the 80 to 30 countries that have not, these are the kind of countries that simply do not sign treaties and try to avoid anything that is not due to them. So this just like the Geneva Convention and Geneva Protocols, can be considered as a consensual treaty, one of those treaties that the vast majority of the free world adopted. In addition, it is very difficult for Israel to retract from the treaty against genocide because, once again, Israel was one of its initiators as part of trying to prevent another Holocaust. The Jewish people, as the people that endured the harshest version of genocide ever seen on the face of the earth, took the initiative to legislate what our politicians and diplomats back there believed are the measures that need to be taken in order for the Holocaust not to happen again. From this status, it is very hard for Israel to retract from this treaty. But once again, this treaty does not constitute any obligation for Israel to participate in this procedure, which is not according to it is actually not according to this treaty. When South Africa made this claim, allegedly based on the Treaty Against Genocide, they went against the letter of the treaty itself that does not allow a country to press charges against another country, only against individuals. So Israel, again, does not have any legal obligation to take part in this.
A small question referring to what you said. Can a country that is completely not involved in the situation, can they press charges?
Against an individual, yes.
So
the treaty says that if the ICJ has become aware of a crime of the kind that can constitute an allegation with genocide, then the ICJ must take action. Now, if in any legislation, in Israel, for instance, it is not, Israel's law does not debate with the question whether or not a person is entitled to go to the police and issue a complaint against someone who violated the law. The law says that if the police became aware that there is a suspicion that someone violated the law, then they have to act. The same goes to the ICJ. This means that any entity, be it a country, a single person, a company, has the legal right to go to the ICJ and say, listen, here is a complaint because I'm aware of an act that can constitute a genocide.
Very clear. What were the current court's conclusions and what are the next steps?
So basically what I'm concerned about are two writs that are presumably to be binding decisions. One of them is something that is already happening and should not happen regardless of the court decision, which is Israel is continue to providing humanitarian aid to our enemies. This is unheard of. This cannot be forgiven to our government to allowing this to happen. This is not something that typically happens in armed conflicts. There is no way that the United States, for instance, was demanded by the international community to provide humanitarian aid to the subjects of the Taliban in Afghanistan or the subject of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, the attackers of the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh just a few months back were not demanded by the global community to provide humanitarian aid. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous that we are doing this, and it is ridiculous that the court demands us to do. The humanitarian solutions for the people who suffer in Gaza is to cross the border to Egypt and for the global community to establish humanitarian camps in the Sinai Peninsula until the war is over and the world gets to decide what to do with this population when the premise is that they're not going back to their home where they plotted this massacre of October 7th. So this is the first decision and my response to it. The second one is even more troubling. This is a decision that presumably obliges Israel to act again incitement for genocide within Israeli public. This is ludicrous. 2 weeks back, the Attorney General of Israel has made some statement that seemed weird, that they will take action against civilians who incite for genocide and for racism. For instance, people who clear for voluntary immigration of Arabs from Gaza. Now, voluntary immigration of Arabs from Gaza, first of all, it's a legitimate policy. You can agree with that, you can disagree with that. Our government have decided against it, which is okay, it's its prerogative. But every citizen in Israel can say, listen, I dislike this decision, I wish it to be different, to be different than that. Then comes the Attorney General and says, no, this is incitement. This is illegal. And people who make this statement may face legal action, may take criminal actions that being taken against them. So what I believe has happened is that before the ICJ made the decision, it was somehow leaked to the GA office, okay, our representative, our lawyers that work in the ICJ are basically employees of the Attorney General. And she understood that this is the way it goes and make the statement that Israelis who will incite for genocide and racism within Israel will be prosecuted. Now, it is needless to say that the tribunal of the ICJ has got no jurisdiction whatsoever over the freedom of speech of the civilians of Israel. And this presumption of them to intervene with the Israeli democratic discourse about how this war should be managed and should be ended, and to try to presume that they are allowed to tell Israeli citizens what they can and what they cannot say about the war, this is ridiculous, this is anti-democrat, this goes against everything a liberal person can and may and must and should that is legitimate in a democratic country. Our government should have go against this ridiculous decision immediately once it was issued, and more than that, it should have been made clear for the Attorney General that if she makes the smallest action against civilians who express themselves and who exercise their free speech against something that she or even the government doesn't like, calling for our army to be harsher with the enemy in Gaza, if the GA will do anything like that, she himself will be prosecuted. Now, last night, there was a conference in Jerusalem. Many ministers took part of it, and this conference called for voluntary immigration of Arabs from Gaza. And this is something that, according to the GA, constitutes incitement for genocide in direct violation of the writ given by the ICJ. Instead of directly saying that Israel does not respect the authority of the ICJ over free speech, and instead of making it clear for the Attorney General not to take action against civilians who exercise the free speech, ministers in the government took part in a conference that says exactly what the ICJ and the AG has stipulated that is wrong and should not be said, which is a positive sign, which means that at least some of the ministers in this government understand their duty to speak for the public, but it is not enough. Israel should officially express itself against a violation of free speech of its citizens on behalf of international bodies.
Okay, so we've discussed international law and we've talked about Israel. What is currently the legal status of Gaza citizen? Which court of law is supervised over them, or where, if they want to complain, for example, where can they do that legally?
Well, they cannot. They simply cannot. There is no sovereign entity right now in the Gaza Strip. There is a military occupation of the Israeli army. This situation does not oblige any party that is over there to take care for the civilians. They are refugees. According to Israeli laws and action, they are free to leave, to cross the Rafah border cross point and to go to Egypt. The fact that Egypt is not allowing them to do so, this is a war crime on behalf of Egypt against the people of Gaza. Once they're there, once they've crossed the border, they have the legal right to go to the UNHCR, the United Nations High Committee for the Refugees, which is the body that not only is authorized by the countries of the UN to take care with the refugee issues, it is also doing it very well. It is something that needs to be understood. The way that the UNHCR, unlike UNRWA, takes care of its refugees is very good. They are very good not only of taking care in taking care of refugees, they also are very good in doing so in matters that resolve conflicts. Because when they help a certain population leave their homeland and make a new homeland for them, someplace that they will be accepted, the outcome is resolving of years and decades and centuries long conflicts. This has happened over and over again throughout the world. And the fact that the Israeli-Arab conflict does not get the good care of the new UNHCR, but had to deal with the pro-terroristic anti-Semitic body that is called UNRWA, is a folly on behalf of the global community that needs to be addressed. But to your question specifically, no civilian in Gaza, if there is anyone there that answers this definition, has any right to come to the Israeli authorities with any demand. And since there is no effective Arab government in Gaza right now, their only choice, if they wish to be treated as citizens, if they gain what governments give citizens, they have to cross the border to Egypt and ask the UNHCR for a refugee status and be replaced someplace else.
Very interesting, Ziv Maor. Thank you very much for joining us. And for the viewers, thank you very much for viewing until now. And if you like this content, please like and subscribe for more Tov news. Thank you very much.